Okay, I think it's working. So welcome to this week's Optimum Health Clinic Facebook Live. And this week we are attempting something a little more ambitious for, that's one way to put it. For the last kind of year and 3/4, I've been doing a pretty much weekly Facebook Live sharing various tips, ideas, perspectives that come from working with people with ME chronic fatigue. And one of the things that people have been asking for is for us to revisit a format that we used to do a lot of as part of Secrets to Recovery, which is to have patients' recovery stories. And so this is our first attempt at doing that. And as part of this interview, I have Gemma, who is, well, Gemma has various roles, let's say, within Optimum Health Clinic. She has been looking after fundraising for the last year or so for Optimum Health Clinic and been doing a great job with that. She is also training and in the kind of later stages of becoming a practitioner with a psychology team at the clinic. But most importantly, for the context of today's interview, she has had a journey with ME chronic fatigue and is really here to share some of the insights, lessons, and perspectives from that. So hi, Gemma, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So there are many people watching this may have seen some of the historical kind of interviews like this that we do. And we like to explore a little bit to start with how someone first got sick in the first place. So maybe you want to just start off just by sharing a little bit about when you first started to get symptoms, when there was first signs that life was, let's say, not going in the direction that you wanted it to be going in. And yeah, just share a bit about what happened there.
Okay. Yeah, I guess the first, in hindsight, I can see things happened a lot earlier, but the first time I really became aware was, it was actually Children in Need, 2014. And the night before Children in Need, I'd been up late baking cakes and things to sell around the office for Children in Need. So got up in the morning, went to work with all the cakes, worked my day, sold the cakes around the office. And then when I finished my day's work, I then went straight into the call centre to take donations for Children in Need. So I was there until midnight. And throughout the day, I started feeling a bit kind of groggy, sore throat, the kind of standard symptoms for getting a cold. As the evening went on, I was kind of like taking the Children in Need calls, just kind of like really not feeling good. By the time I got home, was just shattered, and then the next morning woke up and just couldn't get out of bed. I thought it was flu. My glands were massively swollen, and yeah, I was just kind of in bits really.
And of course, dare I say, the irony of the whole thing starting while you were fundraising.
Yeah, well, yeah.
and interestingly, of course, we kind of come full circle with the kind of the later stages of recovery being in a fundraising role. But yes, to come back to where you were at that point. So I'm guessing initially, like a lot of people, the expectation was that it was flu, or it was kind of just something that was a result of perhaps catching a bug, being a bit kind of overstressed, and that it would be something that would pass relatively quickly.
Yeah. And I kind of rested up all weekend, and then Monday I was like, oh no, I can't go to work. So I phoned in sick, but I still actually worked from home, as you do.
no achiever patterns in any way going on.
Not at all, no. So yeah, I was kind of laid up in bed, still on the laptop. I was off for the whole week, and I think I went to the doctors and they signed me off. But all through that, still kind of checking in on the laptop, working from home. I actually, by the end of the week, got down to being on the sofa rather than in bed. But yeah, didn't kind of get any further with that. And they suspected I had glandular fever. So I was signed off for a couple of weeks for kind of rest, and yeah, but still working from home.
And so how did a couple of weeks then obviously become something that you were much more seriously concerned about? Because it sounds like at that point you were a little bit fighting what was happening, but there was probably some recognition that, you know, you just need to take some time and things would get better. So what was the point where you realized that it was more than just something that a few weeks off from work was going to fix?
Yeah, well, I had 2 weeks off, and for me that was big. Like I don't think I'd been off sick for 2 years before that. Like I just didn't do it. Whatever was going on, I went into work. Or if I was really ill, I would work from home rather than taking a sick day. I just didn't do it. So after 2 weeks of actually being at home, okay, working a little bit, but not like I would normally, I didn't feel much better. And that was quite strange because I thought, wait a minute, I've rested. I then went back to work, but I was on reduced hours because I just couldn't handle a full day. And that kind of continued again into December. And then I started getting a bit worried because I was due to get married in January. And I was like, what is going on? Like, how long is this going to take to get over? Especially because our honeymoon was supposed to be 3 weeks snowboarding in Canada. So stupidly physical. So yeah, I kind of went back to the doctors. I was like, I'm not getting any better. Wedding's coming up, and we kind of left it another couple of weeks. And then mid-December, I was like, I'm a month away from my wedding. Like, what's happening? So we decided maybe we should look at cancelling the honeymoon, because in a month's time I wasn't going to be physically strong enough to do that. So because the doctor had to sign all the insurance documents, he actually started doing tests. So they then ruled out glandular fever. It wasn't that. And did all sorts of tests, and process of elimination diagnosed me with ME/CFS.
What was it like getting the diagnosis?
I didn't really understand it, if I'm honest. I hadn't really heard of it before. I think my husband understood it a lot quicker than I did. He did a lot of reading up and spoke to a hypnotherapist friend of his, and he got it before I did. But I was still under the impression that, give it a few months, I'll be all right. And my doctor kind of just said, keep doing a little more each day. So I kept trying to do that. So I continued working, was working with HR there to kind of increase my hours gradually, and just constantly pushing. But I felt like I was on this, like, such an adrenalized state. Like, I remember my boss saying we were doing some real detailed work, and I was spotting everything on it. And my boss was like, oh my God, you're really on this, even though you're not feeling well. And like, I was just so wired and adrenalized. And
I think that's one of the big challenges, right? Is that often the medical world doesn't really understand what's going on, and they see somebody that's kind of fatigued and struggling, but it just, the logical, if you don't understand the nuance, the complexity of chronic fatigue, the logical thing is that one would say, well, do as much as you can, and you'll feel better in time, and basically get on with it, and you'll kind of get back to it. And obviously, as you came to understand, and as we know full well, one of the best predictors of long-term prognosis is early diagnosis, and with that diagnosis, the permission to allow the body to have the rest that it needs. And when when you describe the kind of person that you were already driven by nature. I'm guessing the last thing you needed was permission from medical kind of advice to kind of continue to push and see that as the strategy to move things forwards.
Yeah, massively. And it's funny, like, at the time I thought like it was the worst thing having to cancel my honeymoon, but actually in hindsight, how lucky was that? Because that got me a diagnosis within a month of being ill. Like, that's unheard of. That just doesn't happen. So actually, it was a bit of a godsend, because I was then able to move forward. So I did my hen do, which wasn't a massive success. I had quite a bad reaction to alcohol, surprise, surprise. We then got married, adrenaline and alcohol again, and sugar kind of got me through it. But afterwards, I then took a really big dip because I really pushed to kind of do that. Luckily, it was quite a laid back wedding, so it was, easier.
So it sounds like it was on the other side of the wedding when you were kind of through the kind of the planning and the kind of the excitement of that I'm guessing that reality kind of landed and kind of set in.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was really hard because we had so many plans. Like we'd planned to get married, go on our honeymoon. Then we were looking at maybe moving house. And it was supposed to be kind of, I know we were already living together, but the start of our life together, getting married. And it just hadn't gone how I'd anticipated. And I was still kind of not getting any better, if anything, getting worse. So we started kind of looking around for things to kind of, what do I do? Because the doctor literally was just, do something more each day. My husband, he bumped into my husband in the car park one day and even said, look, my hands are tied, I've got nothing I can offer her. I think he felt quite bad about it. So we started kind of investigating, what can I do? And I actually started seeing my husband hypnotherapist friend, just to kind of give that a go. And then I stumbled across the clinic. And by March, I did the 90-day program, which was quite eye-opening.
So prior, we'll come to that in a second, but prior to doing that, how bad were things in terms of symptoms and kind of being debilitated in terms of your life?
I was still working because I just didn't know how to stop. I was massively adrenalised. The headaches I was getting were horrendous and they were constant. Like the only reprieve I got from them was when I was asleep. As soon as I opened my eyes in the morning, it was like, boom, they were there. I was very noise sensitive as well. So being in the office was quite hard at times because, sometimes it gets quite hustly and bustly. And the brain fog was kicking in. So although I was trying to concentrate at work and the adrenaline was kind of keeping me focused, every now and again I'd just lose what I was trying to say. And working with brain fog's not fun.
Sure.
So
and so you came to the 90-day program. What was that like? You say it was quite eye-opening. Just talk us through in what way.
It was I was just astounded how everything that was said, I was like, oh my God, that's me. Like it all made so much sense. Like the helper pattern, the achiever pattern massively. And it gave me something like logical that I could understand why this had happened, because before I was just lost. I didn't understand it at all. So that was amazing. I remember leaving on the first day. My husband worked in London for those days and he met me afterwards and we went for some food and I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing, and just talking at him. I was very excited to kind of be getting it.
What was there some resistance to the idea of there being a kind of psychology element and having to look at that, or that's something you felt quite open to?
It was no surprise. I had a history of suffering from depression. So when I kind of found out that this illness had completely floored me, there was a real like psychological link. I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense, because I battled with depression. I think it probably started when I was about 12 years old, kind of looking back, varying degrees throughout my life. But so no, it wasn't a surprise. Funnily enough, I was more resistant to the nutrition.
Okay, interesting. Interesting. And what I think it would be an interesting point to make, because I think one of the big frustrations can be for people with ME/CFS is that being misdiagnosed as depression. And I think it's always interesting when someone's had an experience of both to see what you can say about the difference between those two experiences. And it's not, there's all kinds of cultural kind of judgments towards note to self, turn off notifications from people trying to there's different kind of cultural perceptions in terms of depression and ME/CFS, but in a sense that kind of the point is that if you get labeled with the wrong one, you're not going to get access to the right help. And indeed, often with depression, well, I'm going to let you answer the question. I'm going to give you some thoughts. But yeah, what was for you the difference, or has been the difference between those two experiences?
I guess just in the kind of feeling of what it feels to be depressed and what it feels to kind of have ME. Depression's a very kind of numb, almost quite often unfeeling. Like you can be so numb, you almost don't feel anymore. And what you do feel is just kind of very, very dark, very negative. However, with ME, especially in the kind of time and wired phase, you're so adrenalized and so wired and so kind of in your head. And I think that's a real difference. It's almost, depression seems like you're a bit more kind of in your body. It's a real felt thing. Whereas ME, when you're time wired, is very much in your head, very kind of thought-based, head-based. Sense. Yeah.
One of the ways that Jess, who's director of psychology, talks about it is with depression, all we want to do is to climb into bed and hide away from the world. With ME/CFS, all we want to do is get out of bed and come into the world. Like, it's a very different direction in terms of the orientation that one has. So anyway, going back to, you're on the 90-day program, you're excited, you're kind of learning these new perspectives. How do things progress and move forwards from there?
Initially, I was super excited. I had tools to use.
Oh, Gemma, I think the connection might have gone a little bit. I don't know if you're still hearing me okay.
Yeah, you got me?
I've got your voice. Don't have your video back. Oh,
it'll come back.
Let's see. I think it's coming back. Oh, this is always. There we are. You're back. I was going to say, it's always the joy of doing things live. It's like, just so people know, this is not pre-recorded. We actually are live on Facebook, and we have no idea what's going to happen. So anyway,
I'm keeping it real.
Exactly. So anyway, you were kind of interrupted by the connection. So you were talking about kind of being kind of moving forwards, kind of with what you were learning from the 90-day program.
Yeah, and I actually decided I needed to give my body some time to heal. And I decided to take, like, kind of go off sick from work. I was off longer than I thought. It was 9 months in the end, and then I was actually made redundant, which was a bit of a kind of blessing. So I had the time to really invest in my recovery, and, you know, put all the tools to use, do all the things I needed to do on a daily basis, which is quite a full-time job, recovery. So yeah, to have that time was really helpful.
And was that a difficult thing to reach a decision where you decided you were actually going to take time away from work?
Yeah, I remember I was at the 90-day program, and there was a girl there who was saying that she'd had to give up work, and she was quite upset about it. And just listening to her, it made me realise, oh my God, that's what I need to do. Like, why am I pushing? And when I was kind of hearing about all the things in the 90-day program, it was just like, it was a no-brainer. So it wasn't that much of a hard decision once I understood what was happening to me, what was happening to my body, and what I needed to do to get well again. It kind of, it was an easier decision then.
And so, kind of fast forwarding a bit further down the line then, so you'd taken the decision to take time away from work. You were obviously using the various tools that you'd learnt on 90-day program. What were the things that you found the most helpful? What were the kind of the either the techniques or the shifts or the things that you noticed were making a difference for you?
Oh my God, there's so many things. There really is. EFT was amazing. I think because of my history with depression, having a tool that I could use with my emotions was just amazing. And as I was recovering, I found I had a a lot of anger at having had depression all these years, and now ME. It's just like, you know, the injustice of it. It was just, yeah. So there was a lot of anger there to tap out. I got very good at tapping and ranting. So yeah, that was a big one for me. Yoga was huge as well. Initially, literally just stretching and breathing, but just coming back into my body was really an experience. And often I'd find that I'd often get quite emotional on the mat, you know, because actually I'd connect back in with how I was actually feeling. So that was amazing. And I still do yoga now 5 times a week. It's kind of, yeah, complete love of mine now.
So EFT, yoga, anything else particularly before we come to anything on the nutrition side, but on the psychology side, or just particular kind of strategies of how you were approaching things that felt important at that stage?
Yeah, I guess meditation was a big one. That was very new to me. And I did Linda's courses because I was a bit like, oh, I don't know what to do. So that was really helpful. Journaling as well, just to kind of give me perspective on where my head was at. It kind of really helped me with noticing my thought patterns for the stops, things like that. And my gratitude practice was a big one for when I was kind of feeling that I was struggling with where I was, to actually really connect with what I'm grateful for again and connect with what was good in my life. Because for a little while I kind of lost sight of that. So yeah, and it's, again, that's something I still continue, like every morning, write down what I'm grateful for. So
and in terms of applying those techniques, and I'm sure it was different for different ones at different points, but did it feel quite immediate in terms of the impact on shifting your nervous system and kind of calming things down, or did it feel that it was gradual? Like, because I think often what can happen is that people can start using tools and then they can get frustrated because they feel that they're not having the impact they think they should have as quickly as they should. So what was kind of your experience of the kind of the progress over that kind of chapter?
Yeah, it was really gradual. And sometimes I look back and I think, why did I stick with these things? Like, I must have had just such a faith that they were going to get me there, because at times I saw no evidence of it. It was like, it was just kind of doing it blindly, thinking that it would get me there. And I guess at those times I'd listen to recovery stories and things like that to think, okay, it will get me there. Because yeah, it was slow to start with. And after the 90-day program, because my nervous system actually started calming, I actually got worse and got less energy, which is massively common. So yeah, I then kind of went backwards and then built again from there. But it actually gave me some more solid foundations to build upon by doing that. But,
and I think, just to speak to that, I think it's a really important point, because one of the things that can happen is if we're tired and wired, and then we take away the wired, what we're left with is actually the tired.
yeah.
Like, in a sense, the tired and wired is because there isn't real energy in the system. Like, the mitochondria or whatever are not producing enough energy. So then we use adrenalized energy as a substitute to try and keep us going. Yeah. But actually, it's not real energy. We don't have energy. What we have is adrenaline. You take away the adrenaline, actually what you're describing, what you then feel is actually the tiredness and the fatigue. And we have to go through a process of allowing the body to actually have the rest. When we talk about stage 1 being crash stage 2 being tired and wired, and stage 3 being reintegration, that we actually sometimes have to go from stage 2 back to stage 1 to allow the body to get the healing and rest, to then come forwards with real energy, which doesn't feel like that adrenalized state. But it takes a certain amount of trust sometimes, as you're describing, to be able to kind of actually notice I'm doing less, not more. But rather than measuring progress by how much activity one does, progress being measured by actually how much healing is really taking place. And it sounds like that was a crucial part of the healing process, to actually allow your body to have the rest that it needed to have.
Yeah, and although my symptoms were still really bad, I guess I could start to feel that I wasn't quite as adrenalized. I wasn't quite as tense and just like oh, you know, that was starting to drop. So even though I was still feeling pretty horrendous, that was lowering, and I guess that's the little bit of improvement, and then all the kind of gradual improvements kind of started.
And so, and at this point, were you doing any kind of nutrition work alongside the psychology?
Yeah, so I hadn't really heard of nutrition with ME before, and when I came to the 90-day program, people were talking about all their nutrition stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. So over lunches, we were kind of talking. I was like, right, I've got to get booked into that as well. So I started that in the April, so a month after the 90-day program. So yeah.
And how did you notice specific benefits from that, or was it for you more psychology? Like what was the kind of progress with that?
No, there was definitely help in the nutrition side as well. Definitely. My digestion was awful and had been for years, but I'd completely normalized it. And yeah, so that was initially just getting me digesting food was kind of a big win. We then really focused on my mitochondria because that wasn't functioning properly. So yeah, focused on that. And then there was some thyroid work as well that we did. So yeah, it was a real big help. And my diet, although it changed, it didn't change drastically because I always kind of cooked from scratch anyway. I always loved cooking. So it wasn't drastic. It was just kind of taking certain things out, like gluten, we found was just too much for my system. So yeah.
Cool. In a minute, I want to talk about how things started to kind of progress and move forwards from there. But just for people watching, if people want to post comments in below the video on Facebook, there'll be a comment section. We will take some questions in the end. We've probably got another 5, 6, 7 minutes in terms of just the story, but just to give you a chance now. And I'm going to see if I can, I need to mute. So it's technically quite challenging for me to get on my laptop and trying to get comments off my phone. But I'm just going to see if I can mute myself on my phone so I am not, there we are. So I'm not hearing myself at the time. So yeah, I can now see comments. If people want to post comments, questions, then please do. So you got to the point where you were starting to see different signs of progress. You were seeing progress both in terms of EFT, cultivating a healing state with meditation, stop process, that kind of thing. Yeah. You were seeing progress in terms of nutrition, in terms of rebuilding your digestion, your mitochondria. So at that point, as you started, you could start to see that the work you were putting in was having real impact.
Yeah.
What was that like? What was the moment where you started to go, like, it's working? Not the moment, I'm sure we'll come to this in a bit, the moment you're like, oh my God, hallelujah, I'm on the other side, but where you could start to feel like something tangible was really happening. What was that, and what was that like?
You know what, one of the big ones was I realized one day I realized that I'd had a headache come on, and that was huge because I'd had a headache come on. I didn't already have it. So I had like a year solid of having a headache, like morning, noon, night. And so yeah, I hadn't even realized it had gone. I only realized when it came back, and I was like, oh my God. And so I then went for another year of having like periodic headaches. There was still quite a lot, but I had respite from them. And that was huge. Like, it sounds so silly, but it was just massive. And with that, my noise sensitivity got a bit better, and I could start listening to a bit of music again, which was really nice because I've always loved my music. And I like rock music as well, which isn't great when you're a bit sound sensitive. So yeah, and then when I got a bit more energy, I could get back in the kitchen and cook again, which again was a massive love of mine. And so yeah, it was kind of just starting to do little things, and the little subtle things that made a difference.
And then as things progressed from there, and you started, was it a sense of it was the same insights and lessons that kind of were coming in place in that kind of first period that just needed to continue? Or was it a case that there were new insights that became more important later in the recovery path? So as you started to kind of come back a bit more into the world and be able to start to do things, was there anything kind of became important at that stage for you?
Yeah, I guess it was like I ran very high achiever and helper patterns. And when I was really ill, it was really easy not to do them, not to engage in them. But when I started feeling better, they came back with a vengeance. And so there was work for me to do then, to actually kind of look at the root of them. And, you know, there was, I think through my life, there's been various methods I've used to kind of numb out. There's been the massive achieving. There was a stage in my life of massively abusing alcohol, you know, and they've all just been numbing and coping mechanisms. And it was kind of unpicking those. So it was some quite heavy going work, but really, really rewarding. And that kind of got me onto this conscious psychology course as well. Because with all the kind of work I was doing on myself, wanted to understand a bit more. And then that kind of got me wanting to work with other people. So yeah,
because one of the big challenges can be that it's like someone kind of gets sick partly, and you know, without going into the whole kind of OHC model, of course, there's multiple factors that cause someone to get sick in the first place, but one of those can be certain psychological predisposing factors like helper patterns, achiever patterns. And when we've earlier in the recovery process, and particularly if we're fairly isolated from the world, it's actually quite hard to work on some of those patterns because we're not being kind of provoked by things in the world. It's a little bit like someone saying, I really want to work on relationships, but they're not in a relationship. You kind of have to get in the game to have the issues kind of be provoked and be challenged. And so there's this interesting kind of stage, and it's often, we would sometimes classify it as where someone comes into stage 3 of the 3 stages, the reintegration stage, that actually it kind of initially we're working on being in a healing state in isolation. Now we're coming back into the world, and suddenly all these patterns are coming up because we're having to deal with people and situations and problems, and it's a whole new challenge in terms of the recovery process. So I think you're certainly not alone in that experience. So as things kind of move from there, and you started to get, and you actually, which you touched on, you mentioned the practitioner course. Do you want to say a few words about what that was like in terms of being in a kind of group environment and going kind of deeper into the tools and techniques?
Yeah, it was really amazing. And I obviously completely love the content because I'm obviously wanting to take it further now. But yeah, to kind of understand more about why we do certain things and what kind of the drivers are, and to be able to unpick that a little bit and rationalize it really, really helped me. And to also be back in a group environment, because I wasn't working anymore. So I was actually quite isolated. So to be with a bunch of like-minded people who've been on similar journeys, we were all very different stages. But that was, yeah, really amazing. And I've made some great friends there. I actually went on holiday with 3 of the people I met on the course earlier this year. So yeah, to kind of make connections like that, it's just amazing.
And so we'll come to some questions in a moment, but just 2 more questions from me. What was the point that you felt that you'd reached recovery, and what was that like?
Do you know, it's so hard to say a point, because there's so many bits. And I went snowboarding this year, and that I kept thinking, well, if I'm snowboarding, surely I'm there. But I didn't feel really confident in it. I then, in June, went to a Foo Fighters concert, which was obviously very adrenaline based, but I was like good adrenaline, and I was happy with it. And, you know, the next day was fine, no payback. I was like, okay, surely I'm there. And then in July, I went to the Alps, and did loads of walking around the Alps. It was really physical, and again felt so strong. So yeah, there's just kind of so many bits this year, and this year's just been like kind of getting back out, doing lots of walking. I've been out paddleboarding loads this summer as well. So yeah, it's kind of, I don't know that there's one point, there's just lots of little bits. So yeah.
And when you look back on the experience now, so the whole kind of journey you've been on, what would you say are what is the most important, or you can have more than one if you like, but what are the most important kind of lessons, insights? Like, what would be the things that, if you imagine people watching this that are still very much in that kind of difficult, challenging place, what would you want them to know that you learned that might be helpful for them?
I think one of the biggest things I learned, and one of the things that kind of, I think, held me back, was that I was trying to fix myself. There was definite Project Fix Me going on. And I felt like I had to fix everything, like all the emotional things, every little pattern. I needed to fix it all before I'd recover. God, if that was the case, I don't think I'd ever get there. You know, I'm human. So yeah, the facts, and my practitioner, Denise, so often said, you don't have to like fix everything to recover. And I kind of go, yeah, okay. But in my head I was going, yes, I do. And it's funny, Anna called me out on it at one point and was like, why don't you take a break from recovery? And I was like, oh yeah, I could do that. Yeah. So the next day I woke up and I felt so anxious. I was like literally filled with anxiety. I was like, oh my God, I've let Project Fix Me go. What do I do? And that made me realize how hard I was holding on to this. So yeah, actually I took 3 months off recovery, and I made more progress then than I did when I was really, really focusing on recovery, which is crazy. But the timing was right. So
yeah. It's such a funny one that there's a point in the recovery process where really committing to it is crucial. Like it's the thing that moves someone from being stuck to moving.
Yeah.
And then there can be a point further down the path where actually the breakthrough at one stage becomes the limitation at the next stage. The very thing that helped us get moving is now the very thing which is kind of the block and the thing which is in the way. And it can be really scary sometimes to let go of all of these things that we're doing that are helping us, but actually it can be crucial to kind of move back into the world and start to kind of let go of this identity of someone that is on the recovery path, as opposed to someone that's just in the moment enjoying living their life.
Yeah.
Is there anything else? So letting go of in some ways it sounds like starting Project Fix Me and then letting go of Project Fix Me, in a sense.
And like my perfectionism really helped me at stages, because it meant I was really committed, and I kept doing all the things that I hoped would help. So yeah, for a time it really served me, but then it was time to let it go.
Yeah.
And I guess some of that came from impatience, because I just wanted to be well. And it's the hardest thing ever, being patient about being ill. But God, yeah, if I could give advice to people, that's what I'd say. Like, be really patient with yourself on this journey. And the more patient you are, the quicker it will actually go. It's like your torts and hair analogy the other week. It's so true. If we take our foot off the gas and we just kind of allow ourselves to be and accept where we are, we move forward. If we're pushing, we get stuck. So yeah, patience. And that was a hard learn for me.
It's often that the harder it is to learn patience, the more important we know the lesson is, because it means that we're in a sense we're so far from it that it's like that's why it's so hard to learn it.
Yeah.
So just opening up to people watching, want to post questions. Where obviously if you're watching on the recording, it's a bit different, but if you can see the live button at the top on Facebook, then that means that we're still live. So there's a question here. Well, firstly, there's some character called Merv. I'm sure he might be your husband, which is say hello. That's my wife. So hi Merv. Susan's saying, I'm so much better, but still find about 3 p.m. I need a rest. Would you find the same? So I just to broaden the question, now you feel like you're kind of on the other side of it. Do you feel like you're having to live a kind of protected, cautious life, or do you feel like you're able to fully just embrace enjoying your life?
I guess now I pretty much, just live my life. And it's funny, the 3 p.m. thing, I would often find 4 p.m. was my blip. And that's why my yoga would always be at 4 o'clock to give me a pick me up, because and get my energy moving again and bring myself back to the present, because for a long time I had like an afternoon blip. So yeah, I had things in place to kind of help that. But now it's not the case. I kind of work until 5 and then I do yoga and yeah.
But I think one of the things I would say is that it's often that can be a helpful building block on the recovery path if the body needs rest at certain points to have it. But when we talk about full recovery, we don't mean a kind of protected, careful kind of life. We mean being able to live your life. And it's true to say that often people reach the point of what feels like they no longer have symptoms and they feel like they have normal energy, but there still may be more work to build up reserves and resilience. And sometimes that's nothing new that has to be done. It's just more time that has to pass. Yeah. But it's, if someone's I remember when I was ill, I had to rest in the afternoon for years. And on the other side, one of for me, the biggest milestones of recovery was not having a dive at 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's really frustrating if you have to plan your whole life about making sure that you can have a rest after lunch. Yeah. But that is true until it's not true. And there's often reasons in terms of adrenals and that kind of thing, why there might be drips at certain points that I think also can be really important to look at. Just having a look at the questions. Lucy was asking, how long was it after you finished the 90-day program that you considered yourself recovered?
Oh God. It was probably about 3 years. Yeah. So not a quick fix, but a sustainable one, I feel. So yeah.
And I think, one of the things that I think is probably important to say is that the 90-day program is not a program of tools to fix kind of recovery. So there's nothing that we do at the 90-day program that miraculously fixes someone's body. What we do is we teach people a set of tools and techniques to facilitate the things that need to happen, support recovery, an understanding of what's happening, and a set of strategies of how to approach things. Interestingly, you came to the 90-day program very early in the process, and there was a lot of physical healing that needed to take place that required time and process to do that, but you were able to support and accelerate that process. Other people might come, very far into that process, but things are stuck and they need to unlock things and move things forward. And, there are people who they do the 90-day program or they go and see a nutritionist or whatever, and it seems like a miraculous story. And for others, it's something that takes a significant amount of time and work. And I'm always personally, and I know this frustrates some people, but I'm always very nervous about the miracle recovery stories, because the way that I feel about it is it's a little bit like building a house too quickly. I would, when we had a lot of renovations done on our house 4 years ago. And I would have been very nervous of the builder that told me he could do the whole thing in a month, because we knew it was 6 to 9 months worth of renovations. Nothing had been done to the house in 60 years. It had an outside toilet still, had no plumbing that worked. It was like, that wasn't a month's work. And so inevitably, when someone's on, ill and their life is debilitated, the question, which I remember every practitioner I asked that expressed some kind of confidence helping me get better, the question was always, how long is it going to take? And it's a really valid question that people have. And of course, I understand that people are suffering. They want to know how much longer they're going to have to suffer for. But the important thing is not how quickly someone can recover. It's how robustly somebody can recover. Yeah. And if the suffering is reducing relatively quickly and the tools are there and the inspiration's there and life starts to get easier, that's obviously the thing which is most important.
Yeah. And it's like last month I had a really nasty virus, felt really quite flu-y. And there was a little bit of fear came up, like, oh no, like, what is this? But it was just a virus. And actually, after a week of resting, I was fine again. The week after that, I was up in London doing a 90-day program. Like, and
as in assisting on 90-day program.
Yeah. And yeah, so that robustness of being ill and then being able to just bounce back is, yeah. And
right.
That takes time.
Yeah, totally. So if there's any other questions people want to post, feel free to post them. Just one final question from me. What does the future look like? So having been through this whole journey experience you've been through, when you look forwards, how does that look to you?
It's really exciting. And it's like, my husband always said that, like, when I kind of started this, he was always like, you're going to be a new improved version of Gemma. And I really feel like I am, because I'm calm. I'm not this kind of little stress head anymore. So actually just the way I kind of approach life and live life now feels really a nice place to be. So I'm going to be a practitioner, psychology practitioner, which is super exciting, to actually help people kind of on their journeys, having been on my own. It kind of feels like this has all been for a reason, and I can kind of give back. So that's really exciting. And getting back to kind of snowboarding and eventually doing my honeymoon.
Right.
So we are going to do the honeymoon, maybe for our 5th wedding anniversary. So yeah, that's exciting. So yeah, I guess it just feels like there's lots of possibilities now.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Gemma, thank you so much for sharing your story. And thank you also for jumping in with me on this new experimentation in terms of doing the Facebook Live. For people watching, if you want to find out more about the Optimum Health Clinic, you can go to theoptimumhealthclinic.com. You can download a free information pack, a free kind of report that outlines our approach and DVD. You can also then request a free 15-minute chat with one of the psychology or nutrition practitioners to find out more about the way that we work. I think next week we'll be back to the usual format of, I think, meeting a teaching piece. Then we've got, I think, 2 or 3 more, I think 3 more recovery stories like this before the end of the year. So anything else, Gemma, you want to say before we finish?
No, I don't think so. Just anyone out there who's struggling, just hang in there. Keep doing the things you know work. And there's something you've said in some of your videos. What one thing can you do in this moment that'll help you? And I came back to that so many times, because it can feel so overwhelming. Like, what do I do? What's going to get me there? Well, no, not what's going to get me to recovery. What little thing can I do now that will make me feel a little bit better? And I went back to that so many times. And yeah, so yeah, and good luck, everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gemma. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Bye-bye for now.